have you actually, I'll have you start here and then I'll have you cross into my friends. Thank you. Cool, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Take a big sip, everybody.
On you.
Wow. What a welcome. What a welcome. All right, that's it. It's been great. Have a great afternoon, so thank you. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, or joining me. I'm Sabato Sagaria. I'm a restaurateur, master sommelier. I've opened 25 restaurants in my career, so I guess that means I'm a glutton for punishment. Has anyone ever opened a restaurant that's here? Okay, wow, I'm gonna take you on a ride. Well, today I thought I would share a little bit about my career and over that career, some of the lessons I've learned about opening restaurants, and we're gonna do it in 3 glasses, basically. So this is a 3-drink minimum as we go through it, and each one kind of ties back and helps sort of share some of the lessons I've learned and how I'm applying those now in my current role. So currently I'm the president of a company called Bar Taco. So I used to get paid to taste wine and drink wine. Now I get paid to drink tequila, and I just drink wine for fun now. So it's fun to be able to still be involved in the hospitality business and use my beverage background to connect with people and help other people light the spark in their careers. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and Columbus, Ohio is an amazing place to be from. Not necessarily the culinary mecca. I think growing up, if we wanted something that had any kind of ethnicity to it, we'd go to Chinese buffet or Olive Garden. Both my parents are professors, and you know, in Columbus, that's also, I think, what they would use for market testing a lot of different restaurant chains. And so our claim to fame was we had the home of Wendy's and White Castle right there in our backyards. Yes. And that's also where they're testing. So has anyone ever had a McPizza? And there's a very good reason that you haven't. I've had one, and I can definitely say there's no need to seek that out. But that was just one of those little culinary experiments that they tested on us in Columbus growing up. And probably my first food memory was we had a babysitter, and she said that she loved to cook, and she was a great chef. And one night, my parents were teaching, and my sister and I were there, and she said, we're gonna make macaroni and cheese. Love macaroni and cheese. Who does not love macaroni and cheese, and how can you screw that up, right? So I realized that there's a fine line between macaroni and cheese soup with macaroni. And that fine line is drain and return to pan. I don't think she read that line, and as a result, we were served this bowl of cheese soup-ish product with noodles in there. And I quickly realized that I needed to fend for myself. And so I started cooking, and I cooked seasonally, very focused, minimalist cuisine. You know, in the summertime, I would make salads, and my go-to was a crouton salad with blue cheese dressing. And it's really just cheese and crackers, I guess, if you look at it that way. And then in the wintertime, it's really got into some of the fusion cooking, and would make ramen noodles, the styrofoam kind that you would cook in your dorm room. Take out the noodles, put a little butter in there, take a baguette, crack it in half, hollow out the baguette, put the noodles in there, and then I had my Japanese dip. And so that was sort of my higher elevation cooking. And I don't know why we haven't seen it on a menu at a David Chang restaurant or a Wolfgang Puck restaurant, but if we do, I've got witnesses that that's mine, and I've got the IP on that one. So needless to say, the bar was set very low when it came to my culinary explorations at that time. And my parents, my mom had a Fulbright scholarship to go teach in Southeast Asia. So growing up in Columbus, it was a very safe place to be, you know, very, you know, white picket fence and, you know, the suburbs. And we went to live in Indonesia. And so my sophomore year, went over there, leaving all my friends, all the people that I had grown up with, and went to Jakarta. And where my parents lived was in Bandung, about 3 hours away. And in Bandung, the school only went up to 8th grade. I had successfully passed 8th grade, and so there wasn't a school there. So I had to live in Jakarta, about 3 hours by train from them, and would go back and visit them maybe once or twice a month. But there I was in this city of 10 million people, 10,000 miles from home, And I was a stranger in a strange land. I didn't speak the language. There were no macaroni and cheese wasn't available there. There wasn't an Olive Garden. There's no McPizza. It's probably good. I would have eaten it probably at that point in time. I was, having to learn the language and navigate through it on my own. I found sort of my safe flavors in food. Nasi goreng, fried rice, is still to this day. We eat it for breakfast in Jakarta, and it's still one of my favorite dishes. Satay with peanut sauce and gado-gado. So some of those dishes that at that time were extremely exotic, especially in Columbus, Ohio. But the real sort of introduction to the hospitality industry for me was I was visiting my parents in Bandung, and they had a friend who was the general manager of the local 5-star hotel. It's called the Hotel Papandayan. And he invited me to visit and spend the day with him. And so went and did that, and we didn't travel and stay in high-end hotels, and so it was really an amazing experience. And I felt like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. Like literally, they had a chocolate factory. There was a pastry shop, and we're standing there on the rooftop, and there's the pool, and you can see the mountains off in the distance. You see the volcanoes, and there I was in this third world country, but I felt like I was in a palace, and it was really amazing. The general manager had to go have a meeting, and so he said, well, why don't you have lunch in the restaurant? And so I went there and I sat down, and I remember I ordered a cheeseburger with fries, orange Fanta, and it came out there, and I felt probably like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, just like the king and the castle there, all these people waiting on me. And the cheeseburger came and had lettuce and tomato on it, and we wouldn't normally buy fresh vegetables in the markets because you didn't know where the water source was coming from. So in a luxury hotel, they would fly them in from Australia, which is the closest country, and that's where a lot of the meat came from. So it was a treat having a cheeseburger with lettuce and tomato and the crunch. And then I remember dipping the French fries in the ketchup, and that was when the light went off. And it was Heinz ketchup. And to this day, I can blind taste wine, and I can still blind taste ketchup, and I can pick Heinz out of a lineup. Because in Southeast Asia, a lot of the ketchup they had was a knockoff, and it was overly sweet and cloying, and it just wasn't the same. And at that moment, I felt so safe at home, and it was those flavors that helped connect me to that and say, wow, this is a pretty amazing place, that to be so far away, but also still feel so connected to home. And so at that moment, I knew I wanted to go in the hospitality industry, and especially hotels, because I said, wow, I can travel the world, I can stay in hotels, this is my office. And so I applied to Cornell University when I got back, and studied hotel restaurant management there. And I remember I knew I enjoyed food and beverage. To me, the room side was very transactional. I did an internship at a hotel in Hilton Head in the summer and didn't really get the gratification that I was looking for. So the great thing about studying food and beverage at Cornell is that you have to cook. And so I remember being in my fraternity house, and I'm reading my cookbooks as getting ready for my class, and all my fraternity brothers are making fun of me, until I came home with what I'd cooked. And like, oh, what do you have there? What do you have there? We're not eating the stuff downstairs. We want that. And so I was like, oh, okay. Now I get a little street cred. But also, there's a statute in the New York state law that says you can consume wine for educational purposes if you're under the age of 21, if you're enrolled in the hotel school. So I was always young for my age, or for my class, and I was able to take the wines course when I was, I think, 18, and I did a lot of extracurricular studying. Through that time, I then became a teaching assistant, and I'd get paid $5.25 an hour, and after each class was on Wednesday, they'd give you 2 bottles of wine to take home. It's like, wow, I can get paid to drink wine. This is pretty cool. I think I might have found my niche here. And it was a fall class. We'd just done fortified wines and sweet wines. And so went back to my apartment and had on my desk a bottle of sherry and a bottle of Madeira, typing away my term paper. And my mom had sent me a gift box in anticipation of the holidays. And so there I am typing away and reach in and get a Hershey's Kiss with almond. And I reach over and I sip my Boal Madeira, as one does when you're typing your papers in college. And lights went off. I was like, wow, this is a food and wine pairing. It's pretty awesome. And to think that it was that high-low where I'm drinking some amazing Boal Madeira and then a little Hershey's Kiss from Pennsylvania. So I was like, I want to get into the wine business. And graduated from Cornell, and my first job was actually at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. Has anyone been to the Greenbrier? Okay, one person. The Greenbrier is kind kind of an anomaly. It's a 240-year-old hotel. It's set on 7,000 acres. Almost looks like the White House from the outside. One of its claims to fame was that in the 50s, Eisenhower built a bunker underneath the Greenbrier as they were building a wing onto the hotel. It was top secret, and so in case of, it was during the Cold War, so in case of nuclear attack, all of Congress would come to the Greenbrier on a train, and they would run the country from there. So that was my office. I felt pretty safe in West Virginia at the time, but it was rural West Virginia, and I went there, and one of my mentors to this day, a gentleman named Rod Stoner, was the vice president of food and beverage, and was talking to him and said, you know, I want to run restaurants. I want to open restaurants. I want to be a restaurateur. That's my dream. And he said, well, you need to be able to understand what it takes and what are the sum of the parts. And so he said, I want you to cook in the kitchen. So I cooked in the kitchen and worked in bars, worked in the restaurants. And at the Greenbrier, it's 240 years old. It's pretty rural. It's a one-horse town. And it's the only union hotel in West Virginia, or at least it was at the time. So you can imagine, there I am, a 21-year-old kid, and I'm managing these folks that are lifers. I had 60-year-old busboys named Cookie and Fish, and you can imagine kind of what it's like. All right, Cookie, all right, Fish, come on over here, let's huddle up and let's get ready for they're like, no, we've been there, we've seen it, you're just another one coming through. But I quickly realized that I had a lot to learn from them. And it wasn't me telling them how to do their job, but it was also listening and treating them as individuals, not just as, everyone's the same. During that time, the first restaurant that I was working in was one called Sam Snead's at the Golf Club. A big golfer in college, and having 3 golf courses there, that was a big draw that helped me keep my sanity in West Virginia for 6 years, actually. I realized that when I would go, the restaurant would close down in the summertime, or in the wintertime, and I'd go work in the other restaurants. And I realized when I went to the other restaurants, it was like walking in and you're like in a room full of hardened criminals, and you're walking in and like, oh, welcome to the yard, you're in our world now. And it was, this is how we do it. Whereas when we went down to Sam Snead's at the Golf Club, because it was new, it leveled the playing field. And it was a chance to have the team, and introduce them to new styles of service, training, and also with our guests. And so I realized that when opening restaurants, it's a Trojan horse to try something that is a little bit new, and you can express your creativity in it. And I was like, wow, this is really awesome. So when at the Greenbrier a couple years later, I became the wine director. I was 23, and at that time, you can imagine what the wine scene in West Virginia, or lack thereof, was in the late 90s, around 2000. There wasn't a lot of Burgundy and Barolo that was flowing, probably a lot more Jack Daniels and bourbon and things like that. But it was really eye-opening, and my vice president of food and beverage, he knew what I didn't know. I was biting off more than I could chew. And it was a chance for me to step out of my comfort zone, but be supported by people that had invested in my career that long. And said, okay, we're gonna send you to France, we're gonna send you to Italy. I got to go spend a week at Windows on the World with Kevin Zraeli and the team there. And it was really amazing, and I started to see what the world of wine was, not just what it was in that little bubble of West Virginia. They also were opening a restaurant across, a private club across the road called the Greenbrier Sporting Club. And the Greenbrier Sporting Club was almost like a resort within a resort. So it was built from the ground up. They built a 4th golf course. There was an equestrian facility, its own spa, rock climbing walls, and they're building 2 restaurants. And I said, wow, what an opportunity. I get to open something in an environment that I'm comfortable with. People know what I know and what I don't know. And I'm gonna be able to put on the hard hat. I get to work with the architects, and I get to help design it and really build it from scratch. And that was, I felt so fortunate that fell into my lap, and I was able to do that at that age. I think I was probably around 24, 25 at the time. Now, opening a restaurant in West Virginia has its own challenges, especially when it comes to staffing. Everyone was union at the hotel across the street. We weren't union, and they weren't going to give up their jobs, their tenure, their vacation, and just the consistency of pay to try something new. Something new was what they wanted to stay away from. So literally had to hire people that really had no restaurant experience. We were the only show in town, so realized it was hiring people not necessarily for their experience. Nobody knew what a Michelin star was. It was hiring people that really wanted to learn, try something new that you knew would really be cohesive. Even hired my sister, who was living at the time. She's an anthropology major. I think she went to school to go to school to go to school. But she was my kind of insider, my litmus test. So as we were doing trainings, how it was resonating? Were we giving them the tools they needed? And I had never done this before, so I took the approach of the what. And as we're going through this, we're going to have a kind of talk about the what of opening a restaurant and what you need to do, how to do it, how to bring a restaurant to life, and how it should feel, and then also why we do it. And so that was my first. Kind of naively starting with the basics. I know what we need to do. I've never done it before, but I'm going to make a checklist. I'm going to make a critical path. Checklists lead to checklists. I'm going to write the manuals. I'm going to have every single thing dialed in there. And if I can do that, then we're going to be invincible. So focused on that. And opening a restaurant is very stressful. A lot of creativity, but also very stressful. I actually had hair at the time when I was doing that. And you'd go to sleep and you'd have these restaurant nightmares. And when you're working in the kitchen, it's okay, you're working the line, and all of a sudden a ticket comes out of the printer, then another one, and it just doesn't stop, and you can't catch up. And for me, it was about there's having a party of 20, 30 people. We go to clear the first course, we go to drop the second course, the soup, and then all of a sudden people say, I need a spoon, I need a spoon. And I go back in the kitchen, there's no spoons. And so when I'd go to bed, I'd have a piece of paper and a pen next to me. I'd wake up and there'd be a long list of things that I need to do the next day. I woke up the next morning and said spoons in big letter. That was the only thing on my sheet. So went in and I'll be damned if we're gonna open this restaurant, there's not gonna be spoons. We checked all the boxes, and when you're opening a restaurant, it's a race to the end, and you'll walk in a week before and you're like, there's no way the construction crew is gonna finish this and we're gonna get it handed over in time. But every single time, it's like a time-lapse video, and it's like, there it is. And we were ready for the very first night to get things started, and the team was all proud, and there they are standing at the door, and I'm like, okay, fingers crossed, how's it gonna work? Holding my breath. First guests walk in, and I'm standing back. Okay, what's gonna happen here? The host greets them, takes them over to the table, having casual, natural conversation, just like we practiced. Sits them down, pulls out the chair, black napkin across the last, like, yes. Someone else comes out of the blue, pulls over the chair, like, yes, look at that teamwork. And they start getting settled, and I'm so proud, like a proud parent, and walk over to the table, and I said, just want to welcome you, you're a first guest here tonight. And they're like, oh, are we? Like, they didn't know what they were walking into, and I think if they did, they probably wouldn't have come. You never want to be like the first guest at a restaurant. Inside tip is romantic as it may sound, you're just the person they're going to spill wine on that night. So, walked over and I said, I'd like to take care of your first round of drinks. Anybody want to guess what the first cocktail that was ever ordered at the Greenbrier Sporting Club was? A champagne cocktail. But a champagne cocktail was not the first cocktail we ever served at the Greenbrier, because took the order, go over to the bar, said, okay, we need a beer, need a champagne cocktail, go to pick it up, and there's the glass of champagne, the sugar cube, bottle of champagne, and the bartender's like, we don't have any bitters. And I was like, of everything that we'd gone through, every list, like, we forgot the bitters. And if you've ever seen the movie Weird Science, when Anthony Michael Hall, on the computer, they build like the perfect woman, and she comes to life, and they try and recreate it the second time. And it was Kelly LeBrock, and she said, you forgot to put the bra on your head. And that was like the one little thing that they forgot. And it ruined the whole thing. They caused a nuclear apocalypse. Anyway, that's kind of how I felt. Like, we'd done all this and poured all our energy into it, and that one thing fell through the cracks. We got over it, served her a Kir Royale, and she loved it, and the show went on. But every time when you open a restaurant, everything's done theoretically. You do all the training theoretically, you write the menu, think, okay, this is what our guests are gonna enjoy. I realized that we had focused so much on the what we needed to do and the technical elements of it and the things we needed to buy to make sure we had all the tools. We really missed getting reps and helping people, especially people that hadn't worked in a restaurant, to understand how a restaurant operates. So it was as simple as letting a food runner know, hey, you're a food runner, but it doesn't mean you actually run. You can walk to the table. And if I go back to the kitchen and say, I just dropped the salmon on P1 and the steak on P2, I didn't drop it in somebody's lap. It was me putting it down. And so these things that we just take for granted as slang, they didn't really understand that. So it was going to the basics, and there was this one server named Kelly, and Kelly perpetually lived in the weeds. And if you're not in the restaurant business, the weeds means being buried behind, you're in the shit, and you're just like overwhelmed. And was saying, hey, Kelly, so when you get in the weeds, I need you to ask for help. and I need you to be kind of the Sherpa of hospitality. You will use all the tools that you have at your disposal to really help show these guests how to have a great time. So for example, if someone says they're torn between two wines and don't know what to have, don't be the deer in the headlights, offer to pour them a taste of those two wines. Or if you need, come ask me for help, but I need you to ask for help before you get buried, because it just backs up and backs up. And so she said, okay, I got it. And so there we are, probably about a week later. And it's one of those nights where you've got a party of 20 that's getting ready to clear in the private dining room. The bar's jumping. You got 2 or 3 people deep. And then all the 8 o'clock reservations said, hey, let's call each other. And why don't we go over and see if we can get sat early? So it was like a perfect storm, everything going on. Walking out of the kitchen, I've got 3 plates here. And Kelly's like, remember how you told me I should offer a taste of wine to people? I was like, yeah. She's grinning ear to ear. She's like, well, I did. Can I have your help? I said, absolutely. Let me drop this on the table, and I'll be right over. What wines do you want to taste? And she said, the white and the red. And I said, great. Which ones? She's like, all of them. And so there I am, totally in the weeds, sweat dripping up down my forehead. Got these 3 plates, and then biting my tongue. She did just like I told her. Go to the bar and bring over 10 bottles of wine and do a little mini wine tasting at the table as we're just trying to kind of let the show go on. But I realized that there was so much more than just the what you need to do it. It's not all about checklists. Those details matter, but it's really the human interaction with it. So I took that with me as went through my career and said, great, we need to figure out how to tighten that part up. And I was naive and didn't really know what that was like. So, but it was a lot of fun. And it was my first kind of chance to build a wine list from the ground up. There, and at the Greenbrier, it was a lot of the usual suspects that people would order, and they'd come in and order the exact same wines, and really wasn't much interaction. So I said, I want to take people out of their comfort zone a little bit, but I also realized the importance of having something that's familiar to them. What is their cheeseburger on that wine list, if you will? And so I had some things that were familiar, and I wanted to demystify the wine for both our guests and our staff to make it fun to learn about. So, I had little commentary and, fun facts, kind of like pop-up video on the wine list. That's how I found out that Johnny Depp has a tattoo that says, I heart wine, but it used to say, I heart Winona, because he was married to Winona Ryder. But obviously, once you divorce her, you no longer love Winona, you love wine. So that was a little bit of fun little facts that we put in there. And guests would come in and they'd say, all right, I always drink Zinfandel, I'm gonna have a Zinfandel. And so I'd write down what we served them that night. Next time they came in, oh, I know you had the Zinfandel last time. We have this amazing wine from southern France, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, very stylistically similar. If you want to try some, happy to open a bottle. If not, I'm happy to drink it myself. And they would try that. They'd trust you and write that down. Next time they came in, I know we've had this. Let's go to Spain here. And quickly I realized that if you're helping guide these people and you're showing them a great time, you're providing the connection, not just popping the top, putting it on the table, you could really build trust and introduce them to a whole new world. And so that was a lot of fun for me to be able to do that rather than just rinse and repeat. So after living in West Virginia for quite some time, I went to Virginia, right across the hill, worked at the Inn of Little Washington as the wine director. Needed a change of pace because I woke up one morning and said, I just spent 9 years in the 2 Virginias. I need a change of scenery. So where should I go? And so I said, I want to go where the wine flows like beer, or the beer flows like wine, and the women flock like the salmon of the Capistrano, a little place called Aspen. So I went to Aspen, Colorado to work at the Little Nell Hotel. And amazing time there. I was there for 6 years, passed my MS exam. There. 5 of my colleagues also passed in that same 6 years. So it's really like a sommelier fight club, if you will, and CrossFit. And it was really, really exciting. Also on that trip, I read a book called Setting the Table. And it was written by a restaurateur named Danny Meyer. And Danny was someone who I'd looked up to throughout my career. And actually, when I was at Cornell, it was actually the first time I ever went to New York City. And I was taking a restaurant management class. We went to Windows on the World on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center. We went to a restaurant called Layla, which was Drew Neoprint's Middle Eastern restaurant, and another restaurant called Zoe down in Soho. All 3 of those restaurants are no longer around, unfortunately. But it was my first time to New York, and there's a restaurant that our professors had been talking about, and it was sort of the benchmark for them and what was going on in the restaurant scene in New York at the time. It was one called Union Square Cafe. And so That was the one that Danny had referenced in his book, and wanted to see what it was all about. So that was my very first meal, sitting there, and I can remember where I sat, and kid from Columbus, intimidated to go to one of the best restaurant cities in the world, and going to one of the hottest restaurants, and it was like that Pretty Woman moment where you're eating the escargot and she went across the room. It was just so timid, but getting there, they made us college kids just feel like regulars. And I was like, wow, so it is true. It was a cutting edge restaurant at the time. It opened in 1985. And it was one of those restaurants, at that time, a lot of the other restaurants were all the French and Italian ones, the really stuffy ones that played to the stereotype as we think of the old school restaurants. Union Square Cafe was buying vegetables from the market just down the street. It banned smoking before anyone else banned smoking. In New York, you could walk in and you didn't have to have a reservation. They had a little cafe up front, and you could dine at the bar. Servers were wearing jeans, and so it was casual, and that really didn't exist. And so it was very forward-thinking, but the whole mindset was, how do we make our guests just feel at home? And so that really stuck with me. And to read that book, I read it and then gave it to my buddy Mike, and he devoured it as well. And was like, wow, this guy's articulating how we viewed hospitality, but didn't know how to put it into words. But this is this is what we want to be a part of. So I was fortunate enough to get to meet Danny during my time in Aspen at the Little Nell. And after I passed my exam, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but had a chance to. I was talking with Danny, and he said, I'm creating this job. It's called Chief Restaurant Officer, and I think it'll be great for you. And so someone that he looked up to and an icon, without further ado, I said, I want to go to New York. So I went to New York, but before I go to New York, let me tell you what we got here in our glass here. This is a Chianti Classico by Fontoti. And Fontoti is a state in Tuscany. And 100% Sangiovese, really one of the great producers, and we'll circle back to this in a moment, but have a sip, it's pretty delicious. And by the way, you don't have to wait till I have a sip for you to have a sip, so I encourage you to have more sips than I had. Dude, it's gonna be much more entertaining. So went to New York, and working with Danny, we had 8 restaurants at the time, and we knew looking into the future that Union Square Cafe was going to turn 30, and the lease was going to run out. So we knew that we had to find a new home for it. And when you're opening a restaurant, this is where we'll start talking about the how you bring it to life, and how it should feel. And I think Danny really understood that, especially 30 years at Union Square Cafe. But when you're moving a restaurant, that's a whole new challenge, because choosing a site, obviously location, it matters. But when you have a restaurant that's named after a neighborhood that it helped create and that grew up around it, you can't just put it down anywhere. So we scoured around Union Square, another block in every direction, another block in every direction. And we actually looked for about two and a half years before we found a space. And the way we found it, I was at Daniel Bluth had a restaurant called DBGB, named after CBGB, the old punk rock club, and it was on the Bowery. And they were having their 5th year anniversary, and so it was a rowdy party, a lot of fun. I'm new to New York. I'm like, wow, this is pretty awesome for a school night. All this wine flowing, all these great restaurant professional chefs there. And I started chatting with a friend of mine, Damian Mogavero, who started a company called Avero, which is restaurant software that a lot of restaurants use to just kind of understand kind of what's going on in the numbers and help manipulate it very easily. Not really sexy stuff, but you need it in a restaurant. So there we are, having a great time, too much wine. Damien loves wine. I think he brought a bottle of Domaine Fourier Burgundy, and we were drinking it, and was telling him our struggles. He's like, I might have a spot for you. And then all of a sudden, the place goes crazy and turns into like a concert. And I look over, and there's Marky Ramone on the drums, and you got this just turned into havoc. And I woke up the next morning, had a little bit of a headache, and I kind of pinched myself in one of those moments like, wait, did this really happen? It was an awesome time, but then I got on the computer and dropped Damien an email. I was like, were you serious about what you were talking last night, or was that just the wine talking? He's like, no, hang tight, and reach out to my landlord. I think we got a spot for you. So sure enough, he introduced us to a spot in the building where his office was on 19th Street. We were on 16th Street before. And we found a home for Union Square Cafe. And just moving a restaurant was a real challenge, because over 30 years, people get connected to a restaurant because of the space? Is it because of a dish? Is it because of a server? What are the emotional connections? And also, what are the physical connections that they've developed? And we knew that we weren't going to be able to bring all that with us. And somebody would walk in and said, well, you didn't bring this along. So we knew that really the restaurant was going to be the stage, and we wanted to set a stage, but we didn't want it to be a complete replica. We wanted it to be one that really showed the restaurant's maturity rather than its age. And we hired a great architect named David Rockwell, and his office was right around the corner from Union Square Cafe. David was also a regular there, so he knew the nuances of the restaurant, the space, and the quirks of it as well. And he did an amazing job helping us evolve that space and bringing with us some of the touch points, but also leaving some of the stuff behind. So, for example, when you'd walk into the old Union Square, before you even step foot, there were 4 squares, 4 tiles on the sidewalk, and that was sort of the doormat, if you will. When you walk into 19th Street, you still have those 4 there. The neon sign outside on the old space, when it would rain, the neon sign would go off or would flicker. That's still the beacon that welcomes you in on 19th Street, so bringing that with us in its physical state. Walking in, the bar that we created was 27 feet and 1 inch, just like the one on 16th Street. The lights, the distance from the bar top to the lights was identical. And it was those subtle feelings that would really kind of make people feel like they were coming home. The old space had, I think, 3 levels. This one had 3 different levels as well. But there were also some improvements. The old place had 2 bathrooms, and so we doubled the size of bathrooms, and nobody complained about that. Everyone's like, yes. It's the little things. In the kitchen, you could actually stand up without bumping your head in the basement. We built a bakery. We added a second bar upstairs. It was actually the actual bar cut down with the actual lights. So one of my favorite things was to sit up on the balcony when we opened and watch guests walk in. And there was the eyes wide open as they're walking in, and they felt connected to it. And their eyes were like, oh, I remember that. I remember that. It's like, oh, look at that new. And so it was really cool to see them embrace that space. And as we were putting it all together, I was mentioning kind of that time-lapse video, like, okay, is this going to come together? As soon as we put the artwork up on the walls, that's when it all clicked. And if you've ever moved houses or apartments and it feels like a foreign space, but when you put your old artwork up, it's like, okay, now I feel like I'm at home, and you decorate the walls. And so that was something that really clicked for me. But it was also, guests were vested in it because they were connected. We didn't alienate them. And we wanted the space to welcome those folks back, but also for people that had never been to feel connected, say, wow, I could become a regular here, and it was more of the times. So David had set an amazing stage for us, but how we brought it to life and how it should feel was something, that's the untangible. And it's really hard to just say, great, we know what we want to do, let's just do this. And also, how do you get a whole team to understand it as you move? So we went back to with Danny, we took a trip to Italy, and it was our chef, Carmen Quagliata, who was the chef partner at the old space, Sam Lip, the general manager, John Reagan, who was the corporate wine director, and myself. And Danny always had a saying that going out should be like blurring the lines of going out and coming home, in the sense that there was that enthusiasm, that excitement, and the anticipation of going out and trying something new. But when you walk in, how you could just feel comfortable and at home. And the sooner you could do that, the sooner you open yourself up to being able to find that connection and really appreciate your surroundings and be open to that type of hospitality. So that was something that we had in our mind. And also, there's this Italian word called sprezzatura. And sprezzatura refers to, in art they use it a lot, where it's creating something with so much energy and effort that goes into it, but making it feel so natural and effortless. And we wanted to find that sprezzatura. And when we went to Italy, we went there and we didn't go to Michelin-starred restaurants. We weren't going to places that had tweezers. These were humble restaurants that had just been cooking what's in their neighborhood based on what the season gives them. And they've been doing it for years and just welcoming the people in the community as a place where they would gather. And it's the true sense of what a restaurant was about, whether it's to celebrate, whether it's to mourn, whether it's just to connect. And you could see that celebration. And there was no Instagramming at the table. I mean, we were, but nobody else was in the room. And the wines they were drinking were simple wines. One of the places we went that I think really clicked for us was we went to the town of Panzano. And Panzano is a town that has about 1,200 people. That's where this wine comes from. And the proprietor is a gentleman named Giovanni Minetti. And Giovanni, the first vintage of this wine was 1985, which is also the first vintage of Union Square Cafe. We visited with him, and he's the president of the consortio of Chianti Classico right now. And he took us to this little town. And this little town of Panzano also probably has one of the world's most famous butchers in it. And if not the world's most famous butcher, it's definitely the world's most famous butcher that quotes Dante's Inferno. So really, this crazy guy named Dario Cecchini. And you know Dario? Larger than life personality. But we're walking down the street and we're getting ready to have lunch here. We walk in the door and great, we're walking into a butcher shop. Walk in this butcher shop, and I think AC/DC was playing. It's like a meat mosh pit in there, like it's shoulder to shoulder, and it's just like, what the hell's going on here? Like this is like some sort of alternate universe. And the crowd parts, and you see Dario walk in and just greeting somebody who's welcoming us into his home. And at that moment, realized that here we are again, thousands of miles from home, but being welcomed as regulars, and how amazing that felt. And so that's sort of what we wanted to bottle. And it defined that going out, but coming home. And there were also some inspirations from the food where it was, how do you let the ingredients shine? He had a dish called sushi de panzano, and it was a steak tartare that was let the meat shine and just elevated with a little bit of olive oil and lemon juice, just so simple, so pure. That was one of the dishes that came along with us to Union Square Cafe. There was also another memorable dish. One of the first meals we had, it was, I think it was fall or winter, and it was really cool and bone chilling. There's no central heating in these restaurants. It's like stone walls, and so we were cold to the core, and the first dish that came out was a tortellini and brodo. It was a monochromatic dish of this really beautiful chicken broth with the tortellini and chicken there, and as soon as we all bit in there, just like everyone was speechless, eyes looked up and said, this is coming with us. And I was actually at Union Square Cafe last week, and it was a cold night, and I was like, that's what I need right now. That's the warm hug that I'm looking for. It wasn't on the menu yet, but it was one that will reappear with the seasons. But it was that simplicity of the food that we were looking to channel, not try and reinvent ourselves too much. And we wanted to evolve. There were classic dishes like the tuna burger or the Gruyere salad that we knew had to come, but how do we elevate them to 2.0? So went back and we kind of found this sprezzatura that we were looking for, and trying to understand how we could actually share that with our teams. And we were closed for about a year from the time from the last one closed and the first one opened. So all of our managers came with us. Some of our staff went to work at other restaurants, but also some went to move on, and it was a great opportunity for them to say, you know what else do I want to do in my career? So when I was at the Nell, I remember reading a restaurant review, and it was the review of Union Square Cafe, and there was one line that really stood out, and I still remember it to this day. Frank Bruni was the author, and someone ordered the lamb chops, and the server said, well, how would you like those prepared? And the guest said, well, what does the chef recommend? And the server, without missing a beat, said, it's not about the chef, it's about you. How would you like to have it tonight? And that really, to me, embodied the sense of, hey, there's no pretension. It's not, well, the chef recommends this, or the chef says you should eat this like this. It was just about, you're in your own home. How do you want to do it? And that was something that we knew that that was our calling card of hospitality. And regardless of what we brought with us and what we left behind, this was something that had to be coming along. And how do you introduce that to people, and how do you get people to buy into it? And opening a restaurant in New York is daunting on its own, but then there's the review process. And if you think about it, there's probably 48 weekly columns of restaurant reviews that the New York Times does a year. And so if you're lucky, you get one of those, and that's etched in stone. That's your permanent record. And it's one of the most nerve-wracking and distracting aspects of opening a restaurant. In my 4 years at USHU, went through that 6 times, and so it was almost kind of like a cat and mouse kind of thing in terms of, okay, he's coming, and he always comes at the worst times. The Friday night when you're down staff and your tables aren't turning, and oh, look who walked in the door. Hey, Pete. So we didn't want to leave this a chance. We knew that we had a target on our back, and this was going to make or break us, and we weren't just going to let see where the stars fell. So what I did is had each of the managers write their own review. We said, if you were the New York Times restaurant critic and you were writing about this restaurant and you had control of that, what would you want that to say? And we shared it together. Everybody got up and read their articles. And it was pretty amazing to see sort of what people said and what they were really proud of. And as you start seeing it from the kitchen standpoint, from the dining room standpoint, you start to see people see it holistically and realize that it is the sum of its parts. And there were three things that we sort of named. We wanted the design to feel like you were finding an old friend. We wanted them to really understand that the framework of what we were trying to paint within was inspired by the market-driven restaurants of California, the trattorias of Italy, and the bistros of France. And that was in the food, that was in the approachability of the service, and the wine and the beverage. And we wanted them to feel the hospitality and the sprezzatura. So it wasn't all about the restaurant review. We said that it's not just about that one guest dining there 3 times. It's about every single guest that walks in the dining room. And if we can make sure that every guest experiences that, they're going to understand what we are, and they're going to be able to build that connection with us, whether that's the first time they've come in or whether they've been coming for 30 years. And that's what's going to welcome them home. So when you see that third time he walks out of the restaurant, you know it's coming. And you're kind of biting your nails. They do the phone call, and he's talking through, asking questions, and then, okay, it's going to drop one of these days. And so the review drops, and I'll read a couple lines out of the review. Almost everything about the new place caters to their memories of the original. Now it has a combination of energy and well-honed familiarity that is rare in Manhattan. Check. That was one of our things. The restaurant is the offspring of a mixed marriage between a trattoria and a bistro with an American bar and grill somewhere in the family tree. In the current phenotype, the trattoria genes are dominant. I guess we should have gone to Paris as well and gone to California. The cellar stocks wines from Italy, France, and the United States, and nowhere else. Those are the countries that were on the list when Union Square Cafe opened in 1985. Check. So he got it, and that was one of the proudest moments for the whole team, knowing that collectively we set out and we knew how it should feel and how it should all come together. And we were grinning ear to ear, got the 3-star review, and so proud. The next week, the food section comes out, and there's an article in there, and it's entitled, "What Hospitality Means to Restaurant Critic Pete Wells." And it was focusing on his experience at Union Square Cafe. And the closing line said, "The servers at Union Square Cafe don't want you to be impressed. They want you to be happy." And I walked out after all three of my meals there in a better mood than when I walked in. And to us, that was the cherry on top. You know, we had set our destination, made our mark, and said, you know what? This is what we want everyone to experience, and he did. And it was really proud to see the challenges and trials and tribulations of not just opening restaurants, especially in New York, but to be able to help channel that. And we checked all the boxes. We had, everything. We had the spoons. We had our bitters. Didn't forget those this time. We did everything we needed to, the tangible pieces, but it was really the intangible pieces that are the most challenging and need the most attention. I didn't focus that on the first time I opened a restaurant, but it really clicked here in knowing that it is getting everyone on the same page, naming your destiny, and how we're going to do that and bring it to life. So after 4 years with USHG, went from 8 restaurants to 17 restaurants, and it was a wild, amazing ride. I wanted a new challenge, and I had opened restaurants in New York City. I could get to any restaurant within 30 minutes, and wanted to learn how to scale something, one restaurant, one type of concept, and I wanted to scale it across the U.S. And so I joined a company out of Connecticut called Bar Taco, and taking over for the founders, and they were looking to grow it. And in the past 14 months, we've opened 9 restaurants. And so it was really like, turn on the fire hose and let's do that. So how do you apply everything that came with it? And the first time I walked into a Bar Taco, I walked in and ordered a margarita and sat down at the bar, and bartender pulls out 2 limes and juices the limes, served me up a margarita, and I was like, wow, this is special, not something you see every day, being juiced to order there. And so this is kind of fun. My beverage background ties in this, could be something that's unique. How do we get that consistently? So I'm gonna need some help here. Anybody wanna make some margaritas? You smiling, you knew. Okay, coming up, I need one more person. Who wants to make a margarita? There you go, get on up here. Now, we haven't met before. I haven't taught you how to make margaritas professionally. I'm Sabato, you are?
Alexis.
Alexis, good to see you.
And Sal.
Sal and Sab, here we go. All right, you guys each have your own mini bar here. Have you ever tended a bar before?
Not really.
All right,
On the other side.
I've been on the other side? All right. Oh, how the tables have turned here. So you got everything you need to do this. You've got your tequila. This is our special house blend called Libelula, which means dragonfly. Our logo is a dragonfly, and this is a Joven, so a blend of silver and reposado. Combier, which is a great triple sec. You've got ice, you've got your jiggers here, and this is an ounce on the top and a half ounce on the bottom, okay? So we'll do this together. You got the recipe there if you need to cheat, but you know what we need? We might need some lime juice.
Lime juice.
Yeah.
Agave.
All right, some agave. We have, yeah, we definitely do need that. So, yeah, exactly.
Where was that magic lady
yeah.
before?
So if there's any agave in the back or any lime juice floating around, that would be awesome to bring out at this time. So, but we're gonna start making this without that while we're waiting for that to come out. It looks so beautiful and so set up and like uncluttered here. Like, all right, we're gonna get this. But anyway, so why don't we take an ounce and a half of tequila. So you got the tequila there. Pour it in the jigger. Do one of the top ones and one of the bottom ones. Perfect. You got it there? Okay. And now we have 1 ounce of the triple sec, the Combier. Go all the way to the rim there, all the way to the rim. Fake agave, imagine the lemons, the limes. We'll wait to see if that ever shows up there. But one thing I realized as we were doing this is, you know, I could go to every restaurant when they were all small and around the same area, and I could taste them and, you know, calibrate dishes and stuff. But as we scaled, it's like, wow, we're gonna have to figure out how to scale this. You know, yes, just having a checklist, but when it came to making the margaritas, we realized that all the agave was different, you know, based on temperature, and so we had to make an agave simple. And so I got this, went back to my wine world. Oh, look at that, perfect. We got some agave, perfect.
And then,
Yeah, that's fine. That'll be perfect. The lime juice. Yeah. Do you want to pour some in another glass? Yeah. Okay. And we'll need one more glass after this. So, see, look at this. We can improvise. Perfect.
right, and you need one more glass?
Yeah, one more glass. That'd be great. So we've got the agave, and this is agave simple because we learned that when you would just use agave syrup, a lot of it would stick in there, and that, as we taste the margaritas, some were sweet, some were sour, and we realized that not all the agave would get out of the shot glass or the jigger, so we made a simple syrup which flow more. So I'm going to pour this so you don't get sticky there. Why don't we go with a half ounce agave simple? So put that in there. Okay.
Here's your extra glass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. And now you get no. Well, we'll get to, that's your. You're going to be making a margarita in there.
Oh,
All right.
lovely.
There we go. Perfect. All right. And now, why don't you throw some? We'll do the lime juice here. So we got 1.5 ounces of lime juice. Look at this teamwork here.
It's gonna be the best margarita ever.
Damn right it will. Can't believe I forgot this stuff here. It was like that weird science moment all over again here. One of those restaurant speech nightmares, right? Yeah, exactly. Forgot the bitters, damn it. Okay. There we go. Can't believe I forgot the most obvious ingredients. That's hilarious. Amazing.
Well, these are the important
Exactly.
ones.
Yeah, we're not going to forget the tequila. Definitely not. You know. Yeah, we're not going to drink lime juice up here, but we might drink tequila. So, why don't you put some ice in the big shaker? There you go.
Gentlemen.
Okay. Now you know, shake it. I'll put some ice in your glasses here. Shake, 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 shake. Look at that. Okay. Separate it up there. Go ahead and strain it in there.
Until I'm not a professional at this.
Hey, you don't have to be a professional to drink professionally.
I didn't say I wasn't
There
a
you go.
professional drinker.
All right, so now, hold on a second here. Let me test these here to see if they're actually 14.5 bricks here. This is where it gets scientific, right? Yeah.
Testing the agave was done right?
Yeah, just to test if the whole concoction was there. All right, there we go. Not too bad. All right. Because if not, you have to drink your mistakes, and that's one of the hard parts about this. So as we calibrated this, we had to drink a lot of margaritas. I know it's a tough job, but somebody has to do it. So. All right, well, let's give these folks a hand. These are all salted and ready to go. So why don't you take one of those down there? Perfect. I need to have one of their taste their work here. So cheers, everybody. So as we were going to kind of continue to grow, we sell a lot of margaritas. I think we sell about 3 million margaritas a year. And so if that's your calling card, how do you dial it in? And it goes back to kind of the what. Well, what do you need to do to make a margarita? What do you need to have? Obviously, we need lime juice and tequila, and agave syrup. So I'll make a note of that for next restaurant we open. With that, even if you're just a quarter ounce off of something you see an ounce of, that's 25%. And we're in the restaurant business, so when you think about the economics of that, over 3 million margaritas, the impact that can have on what you do, not to mention the consistency of the guest experience. And as we were growing, growing the restaurants, the design is somewhat easy to replicate, and they're not all the same. They all adapt to their surroundings, but you can have the general feel. That's on the plans, and you can hire people to do that. But again, how to bring a restaurant to life and how it should feel was something that became more of a challenge if you couldn't be there day in, day out. So we sell tacos and we sell margaritas, there's a lot of places where you can get great tacos and get great margaritas out there. But if that was all we were focusing on, that's just the transaction. And it's not necessarily going to get people to come back. So we wanted to figure out how we could help people understand it's all about the interaction as well. And this is people on our team. And what is our purpose? And there's a saying, you don't buy a 1/4-inch drill bit because you want a 1/4-inch drill bit. You buy a 1/4-inch drill bit because you want a 1/4-inch hole. And it's buying the drill bit is the transaction. Drilling the hole is what gives you the satisfaction and the gratification. So we sell tacos and we sell margaritas, but we also sell so much more. And we wanted to align on what our purpose was. And there's a gentleman named Simon Sinek. And Simon, if you haven't heard of him, you can Google him. He has the #1 downloaded TED Talk. It's called Start with the Why. So we worked with Simon's team, and we came up with our why statement, our purpose. And ours was we obsess over meaningful experiences so that people can leave better than when they came. And we figured, this can be our North Star. And as we started rolling out and sharing with our teams, people took it for face value. Great, guest comes in, we make sure they have a great time, do whatever we can. They walk out, they leave better, they're fed. Great, that's awesome. But then we started peeling back the layers and said, okay, what does it mean to obsess? Does obsess mean just to simply pay attention? Or does obsess say, what else can I do? Or what can we do better tomorrow? And what is a meaningful experience? It's not the same for everyone. If you're there on a first date, that's different than if you're on a business meeting or if you're for a bachelorette party. What is a meaningful experience? And how do you start to understand what's meaningful to you? And we started talking about people. Everyone thought it was obviously the guests. We sort of switched the table and said, yes, there are guests, and some guests come in the front door, some guests come in the back door, some pay to be there, and others, we pay to be there. But at the end, we want everybody to walk away and say, I can't wait to come back tomorrow. And so we have our employees, we have our guests, we have our community, our vendors. Those are the people that this applies to. And leaving better, is that just great? I went in, I was hungry, I got fed. Well, it could mean so much more. How do you you feel like you mattered. And for our team, how do we give them more than just a paycheck? And we said, if people can use this, it can be a way to sort of crack that code. And when we talk about the what is all those transactional elements. Great, you're going to drop the food to position 1 with your right hand, position 2, your left hand. You're going to make the margarita with the exact amount of tequila, triple sec, and lime juice and agave every single time. That's the what, and we can teach 90% of that, but that other 10%, that's the intangibles, and that's the most complicated. That's what we saw in West Virginia when we focused just on the what. We missed how you do it, how it should feel, how it should all come together. So we wanted to use this as the way that this becomes the Swiss Army knife, the duct tape, the WD-40, whatever it may be, of hospitality that helps us get through those situations that we may not have experienced before. And it was really awesome to see our team start to take those and actually use them. And we call it bringing our why to life. And there was a food runner in Westport, Connecticut, one of our restaurants, and we had some guests that were dining there. And his name was Juan. And the guests were sitting there looking at the window to see the storm coming in. It's pouring down. There's almost a flash flood. And they get up, they look outside, and they realize that their car's underwater. So Juan goes in the kitchen, grabs some garbage bags, some duct tape, and makes himself a custom-tailored suit out of Glad trash bags. Nowhere in our training manuals does it say, okay, what do I do here? Okay, guest car underwater, what tools do I have? Garbage bags, okay, go ahead and make yourself a suit. Juan goes out into the water, gets their car, pulls it around, and the guests walk out and they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this. We just, again, here for tacos and margaritas, them walking out to their car, seeing underwater would have just like ruined everything. All the hard work and effort that had been put in, that would have overshadowed everything. But instead, Juan reaching out and doing something like that was really what we talk about obsessing. That's what it was. There was another instance where we had Dominique, one of our general managers in Reston, Virginia. She was working the front door one Friday night, and we have a wait list system where you put your name on, we'll text you when our table's ready. And through the middle of the evening, she gets a long stream of texts from somebody that's not even on the wait list, and it turns out this person had dined with us a couple months before. The woman, it's a cry for help, and she was in a really dark place, and she was contemplating taking her life. And Dom walks off the floor, and still get choked up thinking about this. And she starts texting the woman, calls the woman, encourages her to call her sister, and she stays on the phone with her. Sister comes, makes sure she's all right, and still don't know to this day who this woman is. She didn't want her name to be known, but it's one of those things where we serve tacos and we serve margaritas. But you look at how fortunate we are in the restaurant business to be able to have an impact on people's lives and really connect with them and show them an amazing time. You never know how that may come about and with what individuals, but that's something that we can't teach in a manual. That's not something that's on any checklist, but it's really helping aligning on people and what is our purpose, why are we here? The what, all those things you can buy, all that, and you can script it out, and that's the easy part. It's the intangibles, like how it feels and why we do what we do, and making sure people stay connected to that. So as I look back on the 25 restaurants that I've been fortunate to be a part of and the teams work with, it's been pretty amazing to see the power of that hospitality, and when you channel it towards that, how fortunate we are to be able to connect with people at different points in their lives with that. And that's the what, the how, and the why, and it is the sum of all its parts. And when we nail that, that's amazing. And if the tacos are great and the margaritas at 14.5 bricks, that's even better. But I want to thank you all for joining me today, and hope that you all leave better than when you came. So cheers.